Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is 3 p.m. ET on Tuesday, and you have found us here at Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze, and we are so pleased that you have joined us here today. It's a special time for a very special author, and you can see JT Ellison. Oh, she's over here. JT Ellison right here, and we'll talk with her in about 10 seconds. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am your host of Crime Time, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 14 novels of suspense. The brand new one is The House Guest, which just came out and after 6 days went into a second printing. So that is you. Thank you so much for that. It's incredibly exciting. But today is not about me. Today is about the fabulous, iconic, marvelous, brilliant genius who is JT Ellison, whose new book, It's One of Us, just came out a couple of weeks ago. It is tearing up the charts. It is absolutely, you all, it is riveting. It is heartbreaking. It is unique. It is compelling. And I can't wait to talk to JT Ellison about it. I'll show you. This is the version of it that I read, a very, very early version of It's One of Us, before it had this amazing cover. I mean, look at the circle of the of. Thank you, JT, because you don't have a ring light to make a little funny halo around it. It is a gorgeous book, a gorgeous cover. It is unlike, I promise you, it is unlike anything you've ever read. And I say that in the most appreciative and approving and affectionate and all those A words kind of way. It is really, really good. And look at you, all of you here. Susie Baldwin and Lynn Heinemann is here. And Pamela Fry-Priest says, I love the crack in the wall on the cover. And Brenda Gaskell says, I'm still in another word from the first chapter fun reading of this earlier today. And here's Pamela Fry-Priest and Anissa saying, gorgeous cover, competing shelves, says Andrew Ball. They're comparable shelves. They're complementary shelves. JT's perfectly color coordinated and mine sort of random. Anyway, JT, welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me just read quickly, and then I'll promise I'll let you talk. Let me just read you this incredible Library Journal starred review of It's One of Us, you all. It says, betrayal, obsession, and familial ties that bind create a tension-filled story with an intriguing theme. Readers will race through the pages to an end they didn't see coming. And I did just that. I raced to the end of this, but also kind of tried to read it slowly because it is so incredibly well written. JT, when you saw that star from Library Journal, how did you find out about it and what did you do?
So they emailed me and said, hey, this is really exciting. Look what, it's the first of many. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. You know, you don't need many. One is just more than enough.
Good.
It was wonderful. And Hank, thank you for doing this. I just, you of all people know how hard it was for me to put this book out into the world. And the reception that I've received at your hands and the hands of our other author friends has just made it so incredibly special. And so to have Library Journal also say, hey, great book, good job. Yeah, it was a little icing on the cake right there.
And delicious cake it is. I mean, I know that on Pub Day, there were authors all over the world giving you a standing ovation, and that must have been really fun to see as well. And you're on book tour, and I keep seeing pictures of you with tens of thousands of people in the audience. What's that like to be on book tour with such success?
It's been really, again, I was terrified. I was terrified to go out and talk about this book. I was terrified to share my experience that has informed this book. And instead it has been healing and very emotional. And I have cried multiple times, which is not something that I normally do. I've not really lived up to the thriller chick reputation. I've been sort of marshmallow chick for this whole tour, but you know what? That's okay. It's been pretty incredible seeing the response and having so many women come up to me quietly afterwards and say, me too. And that's why I wrote this book. And it's been quite a journey. It really
We
has.
will get to all of that in great detail in a minute, because it is going to be absolutely fascinating to talk with you about this. And if you are new to Crime Time, if you are new to A Mighty Blaze, this is why we're here, you all. This is why we're here. A Mighty Blaze was started 3 years ago now. Amazing to think, by the incredible powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Catherine and Caroline Levitt. I know you, Caroline Levitt, to keep us all reading and to keep us all discovering new books and to keep us all discovering new favorite authors and staying connected with our already favorite authors. And that's why we're here today. That's why when I look over here, I'm looking at the comments, not looking away, but Susie Baldwin says, it is a deeply personal book for you. Thank you for sharing. And Darlene, hi Darlene, says raw emotions are appreciated. And Anissa says, the best IG handle thriller chick. Everyone knows you.
Thank you.
So that's why we're here. And let me tell you a little bit. If you don't know JT Ellison, I know you do, but I'm supposed to read the intro and I'm going to do it. It's funny. Sometimes I go places and people say, and here's a person who needs no introduction. And I think, yes, I do. Yes, I do. And no matter if you know JT or not, I'm going to read you her formal introduction. JT Ellison is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of more than 25 novels and the Emmy Award-winning co-host of the literary TV show A Word on Words. She also writes urban fantasy under the pen name Joss Walker, as if she weren't successful enough. She's two people and doubly successful. With millions of books in print, my very words, her work has won critical acclaim, prestigious awards, been optioned for television, and has been published in 28 countries. JT lives in Nashville with her husband and twin kittens, where she is hard at work on her next novel. Is you're just for the past 20 years or so, you could have said that. So It's One of Us is what we're talking about today. And I want to talk with you about motherhood and parenthood and obsession and revenge and DNA and your personal experience. But first, your personal experience aside, just tell us what the story of this book, and then we'll get to your personal experience.
Okay. It's One of Us is the story of a young couple who are trying and failing to have a baby. And it opens the morning that Olivia Bender, who is the main character, has her 6th miscarriage. And she goes downstairs to tell her husband that she has failed him yet again. But before she can, there's a knock at the door, and it's the police. And they would like to speak to their son. But they don't have any children. And it freaks Olivia out a little bit, what is going on. And then Park has to admit that he was a sperm donor many, many years ago. And as it turns out, one of the children that were born from that donation is a murderer.
I'm so sorry, but from the standpoint of an author who is envious of good ideas, that is such a good idea. And I do want to get to the personal part of it, and I promise I will. But where did that idea come from? That idea that there's someone who's related to your husband or your spouse who is a murderer that you don't know about. Where did that come from?
So, I mean, there's really no way to get into the story without getting the personal stuff, because that is the impetus for the story. My husband and I were trying to have kids and failing, and went through the whole IVF and fertility and all of the things. Spoiler alert, it never worked. We have kids. We have 2 adorable cats, and they're fabulous. But we never did have kids. And during this whole process, several things happened. And I eventually told my husband, I really don't think I'm going to be able to pull this off. And I would love it if you felt you could, if you want to, donate. And that was great. Several years later, I started thinking about that offer that I had made him and started wondering, what's going to happen when those kids start knocking on the door and saying, hey, I'd like to meet my father. And that's a great story, right? That in and of itself, that's conflict, that's drama. There's all the problems and the things that we need to tell a story, but it's not a thriller. And I was telling it from Park's point of view of the man answering the door and meeting his children for the first time. And it wasn't until Olivia came to me. She literally, I mean, I had worked on this book for 10 years before I could, yeah, and I just kept putting it aside because it wasn't working. And then Olivia in March of 2020, I had this image of a woman walking down a beach. She was wearing rolled up chinos and this chunky sweater, and her hair was blowing in the breeze, and she was holding herself. She had her arms around her waist, and she was so sad. And I didn't know who she was. And because we interrogate the imaginary friends that we come up with, I asked her what was wrong, and she told me she had had a miscarriage. And it all came together, and I went, wait a second, this isn't the husband's story. It's the wife's story. All of the kids are coming to the door. How would she handle that? And what if one of them was a murderer? And then I had my thriller.
I mean, I get goosebumps hearing that evolution of the story. How did that feel to you as a writer? Do you recognize a good idea?
Well, I mean, when you have that idea, you can be dancing around something, but it's not until that weird moment where it all just kind of clicks, the light bulb goes off, the lightning strikes, however you want to describe it. It is a moment when you're like, oh, this is it. This is the story I want to tell. And that's absolutely what happened with this. And I wrote it down. I was like, oh my God, I've been trying to tell the story from the wrong point of view. Oh, it was my eureka moment. And you've done it too. It's amazing. I always write them down the second that happens.
Yes.
Too. So I have a record so I can go back and say, oh, I remember this is what happened. This is what led me to that revelation.
I love that. I have a little piece of paper when I had an idea for the murder list. That was the pivotal idea. And I have the piece of paper that I scrawled it on. It was like half a napkin or something like that. Because that is such a moment of inspiration that you want to remember how that actually felt. Rewinding a bit though, pre-Eureka moment, a moment that Sue Grafton used to call the magic, when our imaginations click together somehow and put together puzzle pieces that we didn't know we had. But you were saying it took 10 years to get to that. What do you think that 10-year evolution was?
There were a number of things. One, I was very busy writing other books. And this was a risk of a book. It's more, the topic is more women's fiction. It's not a thriller. And I didn't know how to tell it in a thriller plot. It's just different. It's a different book. It's a mashup of genres. It is deeply emotional. It sounds very depressing, but it's really not. It's really actually very life affirming. And that was something that I was setting out to do. But it's very much, I don't know. The timing just wasn't right. I didn't have enough altitude. It was a difficult topic for me to think about. I just had kind of put all of those emotions into a box, locked them away, threw away the key, and had no intention of ever really revisiting them. But I switched agents, and I knew I needed something new to reinvigorate everything that I was doing. And my new agent is a woman, and I needed something that I thought would really resonate with female readers with my new agent. And so I pitched her this idea, and the gasp that I heard when I mean, that will live on in infamy. It was, the beginning of the pandemic. I was riding a stationary bike that we had put in because we couldn't go to the gym anymore. And she and I were on the phone, and she was like, so tell me some, we're kind of getting to know each other a little bit better. And tell me some of the ideas of the things you think you want to work on. And I told her this one, and literally she gasped. And I was like, well, looks like that's what I'm doing next.
That's so fantastic. Rewinding a tiny little bit, you were saying that it's not depressing. It is not depressing. I mean, Olivia is so relatable. Any of us could be or have been Olivia in parts of our lives. There's no question about that. And it's heartbreaking because she feels like a failure. And my heart went out to her so deeply as a result of that reaction, because that she didn't fail. And all of us who are reading it are saying she didn't fail, but yet she feels that way. And the whole book is about people who feel like failures in some way and how they cope with that and how they climb their way out of that if they do. Shannon says, I have a signed copy. I'm enjoying it. Absolutely. Talk a little bit about that poignancy and the heartbreak and the emotion that Olivia feels as a failure. I mean, is a woman a failure if she doesn't or can't have children? And why do we think that?
Oh, I mean, we know empirically, no, of course not. Of course, she's not a failure. But when you are in the throes of this, it is an unavoidable thought. It's like, why can't I make this work? What am I doing wrong? Am I doing something wrong? It's irrational, which any emotion really truly is irrational, but it is an irrational feeling, and that is exactly what she's going through. She has this one basic biological duty, that until recently we didn't have a lot of choice in. That was, the whole heir and a spare
Yes.
situation. That's a real thing, and I don't think we've fully gotten past that. And if we have, it's recently. It's very, very recently. So here she is. It's the one thing that she wants most, and she can't make it happen. And ironically, she is an architectural designer. She builds homes for people and designs them and makes them absolutely beautiful. And yet she can't create a home for her own child.
And also,
And
she's making nests for
yes.
other families, which is what, she's making nests for other families, but
Mhm.
they're hard edged and shiny and pointy and not
They're
child
very cold, aren't they? I mean, they're very her signature waterfall edge marble, and I mean, she's an Architectural Digest, modern aesthetic designer. So yes, the homes that she's making are not cozy in any way. And you've got to think that's a defense mechanism, right?
such a telling point. I mean, I thought it was so elegant of you and so subtle of you to do that because it is so revealing of her personality. Renee Herskowitz said, just such a nice thing. She says, so sweet of JT to reach out to the woman walking on the beach. Is that how you felt? Isn't that so sweet? Is that how you felt about it too, that you connected? Or is she you?
Oh, she's me. I mean, she was imaginary. It was just something that popped into my head. Was
Of
this
course.
woman walking down the
No,
beach?
no, I
But
understand that.
I
But
think the metaphor of the solitary woman walking down the beach. I mean, you feel so alone going through this. No matter. I mean, you've got everyone around you. Now, we didn't tell anybody what we were doing. We didn't tell anybody for several years. As a matter of fact, I think there's quite a few people that are pretty close to us that read this and went, oh my God, I had no idea.
mm,
Because it's just not something that you want to broadcast, right? It's not something we're allowed to talk about. It's a secret shame. And that's just wrong. It's the wrong approach to it. And that is why I ultimately decided to tell Olivia and Park's story, is to go ahead and raise the veil on infertility and what it's really like. I mean, this is what it's really like. It's
it's all
hard.
of us in some way. We're all connected to that in some way. And I
If
and
it's
I
not us, we know someone who is.
just like the imaginary woman on the beach, though, there's a power, and just like having a good idea, there's a power that takes over an author, I think, when they have a good idea. And I have to tell you, when I started reading the prologue of this novel, it felt to me like it almost wasn't written by someone, that it just existed in its own self, that it was just this real thing.
Mhm.
What did it feel like to write that prologue? That is, I mean, you're a sensationally good author, and everybody knows that, in millions of copies sold, millions and millions of fans. But there's something about the prologue of this novel that is and I mean on another plane. Can you Did it feel like that to you at all?
Yes. Yes, without a doubt. I mean, I won't even pretend it's the best writing I've ever done. It is unique, it is different, it is special, and I needed something that really made this story stand apart
Mhm.
from my other work. And that was the way to do it, was to introduce this tale with, I mean, let's be honest, it's it's a woman decomposing in a lake, right? How do you make that pretty? How do you address something so primal and so, you know, gross in many ways? How do you make the grotesque beautiful? And that's what I was thinking with this. I wanted to knock my agent's socks off, right?
Yes.
I had shown her a little bit of the story, um, with a little bit of the prologue, and the prologue, it was fine. It was a fine prologue to the story, but it was nothing different. It was nothing special. And, when I first was trying to get, a book deal, back before I was a debut, one of the rejections I got said, "This is great. There's nothing about it that elevates it from everything else out in the marketplace." And that has stuck with me, and it's something every time I sit down to the page, I want to do something that is going to elevate the story in some way. And in this case, it was the prologue. I mean,
Did you
and it
write?
was so different. I
Go
will
ahead.
tell you the God to honest truth, my editor tried to get me to get rid of it.
Oh,
It's because it is so different. And so, she goes, it's I don't know that this is what we want to start this book. Now, at the time, I didn't know who the prologue was about.
that's what I was going to ask you. So when you wrote it, did you know? I mean, had you written the whole book and put this at the beginning?
No, 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 no. No, it was there in a couple of different forms at the very beginning. And then I was probably 20,000 words in when I went back and just really threw myself into it and tried to turn it into something remarkable
Yeah. Well,
and
if you all,
different.
I'm not going to read it to you, but Hannah Mary McKinnon on our First Chapter Fun read it today, and that is
Wow.
on video on First Chapter Fun. So not right now, but after this is over, and after you buy a copy of JT Ellison's It's One of Us, hop on over to First Chapter Fun and listen to Hannah Mary McKinnon reading that prologue, because when I started reading the prologue, and I won't go on about it, just 30 seconds more. I thought, wow, doesn't sound like JT. This is gorgeous, voluptuous, thought-provoking, philosophical, beautifully written literary fiction. And then you turn the page to chapter 1 or whatever it's called, and then it's thriller chick is back, with the storytelling, page
Right.
turning, riveting, illuminating, brilliant, brilliant thriller. And so it makes both parts be all the better. And it does, I agree with you, elevate it. Uh, Talk a little bit about the great structure, though. You have the wife, you have the husband, you have the detective, you have the daughter. Talk a little bit about why you divided the book that way and how that worked.
So I think that's something that we're always thinking about, how everybody does something cool and we read it and we're like, dang, I wish I had thought of that. How do we do that? So how do you make a book structurally exciting? For me, sometimes writing Olivia was too hard. And on those days, I would just bypass her entirely and go into somebody else's point of view. So there's what, 7 points of view in this, which is a lot for any book, but every point of view is a concentric circle around Park's one action back in college when he donated sperm. And every moment of this book and every point of view and every character is a result of those concentric ripples around that little stone thrown in the pond. And so when I was having a hard time with one character, I would switch to another and I would tell their story. And so we get to hear this story, not just from Olivia, but also from Park, the husband. We hear
I mean, let me
things
just
from,
show you. Let me just show you all, so you know what we're talking about. The chapters are marked
right.
like this: the wife, the husband, the daughter, the son, those kinds of things, which makes it be instantly understandable,
Mhm.
easy to read. Juggling points of view for the reader from a reader's point of view is easy. We totally think, okay, click now, now we're Olivia, click now we're Park, click now
Right.
we're whoever, the detective. You made the structure be so seamless to the book that it makes the book be easy to read, fun to read. It's complex but not complicated. Did you do that from moment one?
I knew I wanted to tell a lot of different stories about this, and I knew so same editor, years ago said to me that I was failing if I needed to identify who was speaking at the beginning of a chapter, right? So the chapter head would have the person's name, not failing, but that wasn't necessary. I didn't need to signal to the reader if I was doing my job in the narrative. I didn't need to signal to the reader who it was. And it was incredibly good advice, because I'm very, very attuned now to, when I start with a new point of view, to make sure that the reader knows exactly who it is, but not necessarily by saying who it is, their name, or anything like that. But when you have 7 points of view, you got to label it. It's just something you have to do. And it seemed kind of fun, oh, it's the wife's turn, it's the husband's.
And I think by making them be the role, not the name. You don't say Olivia, you say
Exactly.
and the reader is like, okay, I get this now. And the reader flips their point of view as well, just like turning the channel on TV. It's a brilliant idea.
Well,
and
speaking of TV, that's also the way it was written. It was written specifically for episodic TV, so that we've got that ABCD character storyline that you can plug in every episode to that person. And so, the episode would be the wife's episode or the husband's episode. I was really thinking cinematically when I read this.
And that's so, you're not only thinking cinematically, but you're thinking about the people who are reading it on an audio book.
Sure.
Because you're grounding the reader in where you are in the novel when you pick it up. Because when you're reading and when you're listening to an audiobook, you can't flip back and say, now, who is that? What point of view is that? So in every medium, you're making it easier for the reader to read the novel. You were saying earlier that these are all concentric circles about something that happened in the past. Secrets play such a big role in this novel, and the idea of how people in a relationship, whether it's a family, husband and wife, or brother and sister, or mother and daughter, whatever, when you decide to reveal something to the other person and when you decide not to. Talk a little bit about secrets and how big a role those play in this novel.
So Diana Gabaldon, Outlander, there is a phenomenal moment when Jamie and Claire are getting to know one another. And Jamie says, I think marriage has rooms for secrets, but not for lies. And that really impacts me when I'm going forward as a writer. And I'm thinking about, okay, what is a lie? What is an omission? And what is a secret? And that's, what he has done, what Park has done. Olivia says to him, I want you to donate because I don't think this is going to happen. Very, very indicative, very much mimicking the conversation I had with my husband. Park at that moment can say, I donated when I was in college. We're all good. And he doesn't. And as my friend Lauren Lowry coined, the omission about his emissions has created, now he's lying to her.
Yeah. And now he can't. Now he can't
go back on that, right? He had the opportunity to tell her the truth. But if he had, then we wouldn't have a book.
Right. Well, that's what I said. It's all about secrets and lies.
It's all about secrets. Exactly. So, but that, to me, those kinds of absolute, you've got an opportunity to tell the truth. Come clean.
Also, from the standpoint of writing and from the standpoint of real life and writing about real people, since these characters are real people, once you realize that someone has left something out, has not told you something, then what else did they leave out?
Right. How can you ever trust them again?
And also, what about your own secrets? And that's the thing, you balance what you haven't told. And you do that so brilliantly in this book, where we will not go. As we're running out of time a little bit. The ending of this book, 2 questions about it. Did you know it before you got there? And also, it's so sweetly poetic. The ending is really, I mean, you close the book and tears come to your eyes a little bit. Did they to you when you finished writing it? And what was so special? I know we're not going to talk about the ending, but just the feeling of the ending. How did you feel when you wrote it?
Well, it's an incredibly emotional ending. Just and it's hard to go into, but obviously all the players are there, and it is the culmination of this journey for all of them. And it had to be a hard stop, right? It has to be a hard stop, or else the book could just go on and on and on. I did not know the ending. I never do. I never know the ending until I'm close to it, 75,000 words in.
Mhm.
And I made some alterations to it in the editorial process just to make it a little more impactful. I knew, about three-quarters of the way in, I realized what had to happen. And of course, it's awful to know that. For me, I don't like knowing the ending before I really get there, because then I'm worried about how am I going to telegraph, the end
Yes.
and ruin it. But I added an epilogue that I thought,
Yeah.
our role as writers is to create stories that are inevitable. Right. The ending has to be inevitable. It has to be satisfactory in a way that, if I just ended where the book ended, it would be satisfactory, but it needed that epilogue. We
Well, it
needed
wouldn't have been
to find out.
satisfying. There's that emotional coda at the ending where you wrap up all the emotional ends,
Right.
and you do that so tenderly and so realistically.
Yeah.
Did you cry when you got there?
Are you talking about the author's note? Or are
No.
you just talking about just no, the epilogue? The epilogue was actually very satisfying to me. Um, it was the documentary script, because there's also a documentary script that I wrote for this that has multiple parts, that also is at the end and gives a little bit more perspective, even more into what's happening with all of the characters. It was the very last line of the documentary script, which is not a spoiler, that Olivia is walking on a beach. That was when I lost it. That was like, wow, there's the full circle of the book idea. And Hank, I got to tell you, so I've been out on tour, and last week I was in South Carolina at Litchfield, and I had an extra hour before my flight left, and so I went to the beach, and it was a cold, windy day, and there was a small family, just a mother, father, and a child walking. And then when I looked to my left, there was a woman trudging up this chilly beach. And wow, 3 years, all right there, full circle. It was pretty cool.
Well, I mean, I get goosebumps because for all the obvious reasons. And then you just, when you're on the right track of something, the
Right.
universe gives you a
The
sign.
universe gives you a sign.
Yes, you are. Yes, thank you. It's saying thank you. You have received this gift and you have done well.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with you and this gorgeous novel. It's One of Us, by J.T. Ellison. Diane says chills. And I think every single one of us, before we take the questions, every single one of us has chills hearing this story from beginning to end. Susie Baldwin, thank you, Susie, says so emotional, goosebumps. And Andrew Chapman says, wow. And I think we're all saying wow too. I did see that I want you to look at the comments for a second, because it's just hearts and
Yeah,
exclamation.
stop. Y'all are making me cry. Quit.
All these kinds of things. This is such a loving list of questions. Let me see a few. Diane says you hit it out of the park with this book. Don't say park, and it is that.
Don't say park.
That's one of the characters' names. That's an inside joke. It's One of Us by J.T. Ellison. Let's take a couple of questions, JT. If you have a minute or two to stick around before we give away. I forgot to tell you all. JT and her wonderful publisher Mira are giving away a copy of It's One of Us. It will be the real book with the real cover. I'm not giving
it will be this one. It will be this one right here, the one in my hand.
That one, but Margie, hey Margie, so nice to see you, says the cover is beautiful. Is that the original cover?
It is. So Sean Capitan, who is my artist, calls this the unicorn. Every once in a while, they have a cover that he puts together that nails it in one try. And this was it. This is the garden path between the house and where Park works out in the shed, and the crack in the foundation. I mean, that it could not epitomize this story more. It's just absolutely perfect. And the colors are perfect. I mean, literally, we all knew it. We all knew it. And that was it. It was like, don't even touch it.
Just don't touch it. Just hit print. Just a hit print. Put
Just
my name
go.
on it.
This is
Hit
it.
print. That's
And it is. It's spectacular. It's just really a perfect cover.
It glows. The yellow letters really glow. It's
Yeah.
it's quite amazing, magical. Darlene is saying, Darlene McElhaney is saying, was It's One of Us always the title?
No, it was not. The first title was The Many Faces of Me. It was called The Halves for a while. It was called Never Darling. That one got really, really far. I thought that was going to be the title. And then everybody pulled back at the last second and said, we don't feel like that really encapsulates the story. And so my editor, my publisher, and my agent and I got on a Zoom. And I like to leave little nuggets at the end of chapters that are going to lead you to the next story. And it was the end of one of the chapters. I was flipping through. Oh, here it is. I found it. The end of chapter 8. I was flipping through and looking at the last lines of every chapter. And I said, oh, it's one of us. And everybody got quiet. And they said, say it again. I said, it's one of us. And like, that's it. And so it took me a little bit to wrap my head around it as the title. And now it feels so inevitable.
Yeah, it feels so inevitable. I mean, it feels so instantly, multi-layeredly.
Yeah, of course that's the title. Of course it is.
And did I say that it just all you have to do is leave a question or a comment to be entered to win the giveaway? I think I interrupted myself, as I sometimes do. Forgot to finish my own sentence. So we have about 2 minutes, you all, before we're going to try to spin the wheel of fun, or maybe we'll pick a winner. Catherine says, is there anything you wish you could have included but just didn't fit?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I would have liked to expand Perry a little bit. Nobody talks about Perry, and Perry is Park's actual fraternal twin. I have a thing for twins in my stories. There's twins in almost all my books. And Perry and Olivia have a past as well. But he's left the family, and he's a nature photographer. And I couldn't think of anything more exciting, right? To have this architect on one hand, Park is a ghostwriter, and then Perry has left Nashville to become a BBC correspondent. I mean, he goes out and he's the one that does all the videography for these incredible nature shows that you see, and all the pictures in National Geographic. He's such a cool character. I would really, really like to expand on him. Yeah.
Well, let me just say though, Catherine, when you read It's One of Us, you will see that that Perry is, in my opinion, is in there the perfect amount of time. And JT has done a fantastic story. And they talk about killing your darlings, and I always think they're not my darlings if they clog the pacing of my story.
Sure.
Gone. So this is a glorious. I'm going to hold up the advanced reader copy, but you won't get one of these. If you win, you'll get the real one, which JT will hold up right now. The glowing cracked foundation. So I think that's a really great story. And Nisa has our final question, which will be, what are you reading and loving now?
Well, The House Guest was pretty dang amazing.
Thank you.
Just incredible, and the coolest swag packet I have ever seen in my life. It's so cool. I just started Rebecca Mackay's new book.
There's something I want to tell you. Is that what?
Yeah, there's something I want to tell you. And I love academic mysteries. So it is definitely an academic mystery. And I just started it.
So I have some questions for you. What is the title of it, you all? I have some questions for you. I have some questions for you.
I think it's I have some questions.
Yeah, it seems like That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's being acclaimed. I can't wait to read it. Isn't that the hardest question when someone says, "What are you reading and loving now?" And you think, I'm reading a million books. I can't think of a name.
I am always just like you. I'm always reading a million books. I just finished Danielle Girard's Up Close for a blurb, and it was amazing. Barbara Butcher actually has a really cool nonfiction book coming out about death investigators and the medical examiner's office in New York. And I just finished that. I don't know that it's for everyone because, it's pretty real, but wow, it was incredible.
Very revealing and what a personal book.
Yeah.
Very difficult choice for her to write that novel. So yes, that was interesting. That nonfiction book. Very, very interesting.
I have some questions for you. Yes, I see it there in the.
Thank you, Kimberly. I knew you'd come through with that.
It's by my bedside table. I meant to bring it in here just in case somebody asked. So good job, Anissa.
Well, we rely on Anissa for that.
Also, good to see you. I met Anissa last week in South Carolina. I
was about to say exactly the same thing. One of the marvelous things about the world reopening is that all of our friends and new friends who I'm looking at the comments now, who we know from just seeing their little snippets of names and pictures are real life people that we get to see. And I saw Anissa too in South Carolina, and I almost burst into tears, as I'm sure you did, that you think, oh, you have here's the rest of you, not just your face. And you all become real people, which is quite a joy. Marlene says, love the title. So let's give away of the gorgeously titled It's One of Us. And we will see if we are going to spin the wheel of fun or whether we are just going to choose a winner at random. Kimberly in the back room is going to figure out, Kimberly's in the control room, to see if we can make the wheel of fun work, or whether Kimberly is just going to post at random the name of a winner of It's One of Us by JT Ellison. I think we could sing while we're waiting.
Oh God, you don't want me to sing.
Are you still? No, me either. My family, my mom and my two sisters, were all such terrible singers that when we sang Happy Birthday together, you didn't know what it was. You didn't know what song it was. It was only the occasion. So let's see. And the winner is Marlene Waters. Yay. Thank you. And congratulations, Marlene. You were the one who said you loved the cover. And so it is marvelous that you will get a very own cover of your own. So send an email with all your info to me, hank@hankpryan.com, and I will make sure that we get you a copy of JT Ellison's marvelous It's One of Us. JT, congratulations. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today.
I just everything you've done for this book, Hank, I can't thank you. And thanks to A Mighty Blaze for having me back.
Our complete pleasure, a total pleasure. Can't wait for next year when we have you back. You all in the audience, do not move, or else you have 15 minutes to go get a cup of coffee, go get a cup of tea, go get a glass of lemonade, get a glass of wine if it's in your time zone. Too early here, but maybe it's okay for you, because coming up at 4:00, we have William Landay, All That Is Mine, I Carry With Me. I cannot believe that I am bringing you JT Ellison and William Landay in the same day, two blockbuster, powerhouse, amazing authors with absolutely astonishingly wonderful books. So be back here at 4 p.m. ET to listen to Bill Landay explain the gorgeous story behind All That I Have. All that is mine, I carry with me. All that is mine, I carry with me. And if you have to go do something in your real life, come back next Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET to talk to Greg Hurwitz. Do we not have wonderful authors about The Last Orphan? If you don't know Evan Smoke, he's sort of James Bond meets Jack Reacher. And his adventures are wonderful. So if I see you in 15 minutes, great. If we see you next Tuesday, that's great. Please don't forget, it's always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time. Thank you all. Love you.